Aloha, I'm James Minnich. Let's talk principled negotiations. In 1979, Fisher and Urey established the Harvard Negotiation Project to research and understand the principles of effective negotiations. The result of that work was the publication of this seminal book, Getting to Yes. It's become an international bestseller. It has been reprinted twice since then, since it came out in 1981, and it is used as really the standard of negotiations. In this lecture, we'll talk about the problem, the method, and yes, but those other circumstances where we ought to consider when negotiations can be challenging. So the problem is positional bargaining. It's that contest of wills. It's where two sides take a position, usually very extreme, yes? They argue for it, and they make concessions in order to reach a compromise. Frankly, it's probably what we think about most often when we think about negotiations. We'll watch this video and we'll talk about it.
Crackling, very much alive, still tray fresh. So, name your best price.
For 10,000 bolts.
10,000 bolts of finest quality grade A.
Yeah, but it's difficult to shift and it's difficult to store. If I get the revenue men in there sniffing around, what's the best price? 150 guineas.
Gentlemen, put the merchandise back on board and prepare to sail.
Hold on. 1 minute. Hold on, Cuddles. 160.
Seeing as I'm feeling particularly generous today, I'll settle for 200.
200? Okay. You're having a laugh. Have you had your head in that? Has he been saying that where the air's too thin?
You're being very rude.
Not anymore.
200.
180.
200.
That's not negotiation. I'm changing my number. 185.
Did I hear 200?
From you did, yeah.
You said 200.
If I did, you're a ventriloquist. Okay, 195, final offer.
195 it is. So with sales tax, that's, let's see, 200.
Brilliant. Put it in the back.
So we're going to ask ourselves why this type of negotiation fails. Well, it's inefficient. It's inefficient because to take extreme positions and work toward something that we can compromise on can take a long time. While this type of negotiation we just watched is perhaps, familiar to haggling, it's not so dissimilar from much more protracted negotiations that go over a longer period of time. And so it's inefficient. It produces unwise agreements, just like in this video we watched. It caught up in the moment. The buyer really didn't pay what he wanted to, was pressured into a sale, and often we find ourselves dissatisfied when we walk away from an agreement like that. So it produces unwise agreements, and it endangers relationships. We need to think about how our relationships after a negotiation will be. Another way of saying this really is that for an effective negotiation, it must be efficient, it must produce a wise agreement, and it must preserve our relationships. If it doesn't do that, we need to reconsider ways to effectively be able to negotiate. If in fact your negotiations resemble a little bit of that video, then you continue watching this, because I'll talk to you about ways of being more effective in your negotiation. So the method of principled negotiation then are these 4 points: people, interest, options, and criteria. I remember that in an acronym that I call PIOC. So principle number 1 is to separate the people from the issues. This is important. People are not the issues, and we need to treat them as individuals. We'll talk about all of these principles in the following slides. We need to focus on our interests, not our positions. In the video we watched, the position was that he wanted to sell it for 200. That has nothing to do with interests. We'll try to disaggregate what that means. Principle number 3 is to invent options for mutual gains. That's right. Both sides need to walk away better off having negotiated. So we're looking for mutual gain. And the 4th principle is that we insist on using objective criteria. This is something more than one side exerting their will on the other and saying, this is how it'll be. Together, PIOC, people, interests, options, and criteria. That's the method of principled negotiations. So principle number one then, we're going to separate the people from the issue. There are three categories of people issues that we ought to consider. Their perceptions, their emotions, and their communication. Let's watch this video.
Quick, it's a supervisor demand.
One second.
Yeah, they come with full-time guarantee.
Take a minute. Thanks.
No, I can get them with this.
Hello?
You gotta be kidding me. I'm buying a freaking American Eagle from a company that's supposed to be in America, and I get India?
I understand that you're upset, sir.
No, you don't. You don't understand. Last month, I lost my job at the plant where I worked for 22 years because the whole operation moved to Mexico. My brother had to leave town because there are no jobs.
I know how you feel, sir.
No, you don't. You have a job.
Sir, please don't hang up. I have a solution for you.
What?
See, we understand that many Americans are upset about outsourcing, so we have located American-made versions of all our products. If you have a pen, I will give you the website of an American company that makes an eagle statue very similar to ours. Same size, same materials, only theirs is made 100% in America.
Well, thanks. I appreciate it, but is the price about the same?
No, sir. Theirs is $212 more. Sir?
Yeah, all right. Just sell me yours.
Thank you, sir. May I have your credit card?
Okay. Perceptions. We need to be able to see the other side's point of view. It doesn't mean we have to agree with them, but we need to be able to see it. We need to understand what it is that they see, how they perceive the situation. We need to involve them in the process. If we exclude them and come in with, here's the solution, we should not be surprised when they don't embrace it. We need to create a cognitive dissonance where the way they feel and act about things are different. If we walk into a negotiation, they're expecting us to be the enemy, but we come in very positive, very complimentary, trying to work together. They've got to resolve that in their own minds so that they can not hold this dissonance in their head. And so they generally start becoming favorable toward us so that they can see us as favorable as we're acting in a positive light, creating cognitive dissonance. In understanding emotions, we need to recognize our emotions as well as their emotions. We need to make those emotions explicit. We need to bring them out. You can state how you perceive that this is occurring. We ought to be able to allow for their outbursts. Sometimes it's posturing, other times it's just raw emotion. But negotiations go on for a period of time. We ought not allow those emotions to derail what we're trying to do. We need to be bigger than that. Communications, there's really three issues about it, right? There's speaking, there's listening, and there's understanding. Oftentimes, we're not clearly speaking. If we're not speaking at all, well, there's no negotiation. We typically don't listen well. We're working on what we're going to say next, and therefore we're not listening to what they have to say. And if we are misunderstanding what they're saying, well, then we're not understanding it well. So these are the three people type issues, and we can work towards those collectively as we take preventive measures through prevention, right? We need to build on working relations. We spend most of our time in negotiations with people we know, organizations we know, those that we will have relations with outside of this one incident of a negotiation. It is very helpful to be able to have a good relation or work on those relations in advance of negotiations we do. And then we need to see ourselves as partners, side by side, looking for mutual gain. So perceptions, emotions, and communications are the people issues, and prevention is a way toward getting after it in advance. Principle number 2 is focus on interests, not positions. These are different, and we often don't even know what our interests are in the negotiation. We often have thought about a position, but maybe not our interests. So the first step is to identify what our interests are, and as well as what their interests are. If we haven't thought about ours, it's quite possible they haven't as well. But this will make negotiation much more effective and more easy to come to an agreement. So know your interests and then be open to fresh ideas. Acknowledge their interests. Bring them to the forefront. Make them explicit. Look forward and not backward. It is not helpful to bring up things that have happened in the past. Yes, but you did this. Look forward toward what you're trying to accomplish. Be hard on the issue and soft on the people. There is no value in attacking people in negotiations. It will not advance toward towards mutual gain that you're trying to achieve. State your concerns before the solutions. In the previous principle, when I spoke about listening, this is where this matters most. If we tell them what the solution is, well, they will start thinking about their response to the solution. If we state our concerns first, they're listening, they've listened to the concerns, and then we bring out what the solution, the proposed solution would be, we have a better chance of them hearing us through.
In the interest of putting this whole thing to rest, PG&E is willing to offer the Jensens $250,000 for their home.
$250,000?
In terms of land value out in Hinckley, Mr. Masery, we feel that's a more than fair price.
How about in terms of medical expenses? $250,000 isn't going to come close to what this family's going to have to spend on doctors.
I understand they've had a bad run of luck, health-wise, and they have my sympathies. But that's not PG&E's fault.
You're kidding, right? Look at these readings. PG&E's own technicians documented toxic levels of hexavalent chromium in those wells on numerous occasions. Everything the Jensens have had is proven reaction to exposure to hexavalent chromium. They have had
breast cysts, uterine cancer, Hodgkin's disease, immune deficiencies, asthma, chronic nosebleeds.
A million things could have caused those problems. Poor diet, bad genes, irresponsible lifestyle. Our offer is final, and it's more than fair.
Wait a minute. I thought we were negotiating here.
$250,000 is all I'm authorized to offer.
Now present your offer to my client.
Yeah, so that offer was a position. Our position is $250,000. They had not thought about their interests. They had not thought about how expensive might this get if it goes into full litigation. What could be the cost of our reputation? What could be the cost of this in setting precedents for other actions? And so it's important that we understand our interests as we are negotiating. The third principle is to invent options for mutual gain. This is often obstructed because we come to a premature judgment. We've already decided what it is we're going to accept. We only perhaps have a single answer approach. There's only one way of doing it. We see the pie as fixed. This is called a fixed pie assumption, right? There's nothing larger than this one issue. The only thing that in the issue of buying and selling a house is the house and the cost of it. Well, there's many more things, right? There could be the time that you move in. There could be the ability to store things. There's just a number of ways of increasing the size of the pie, as it were. We see their problem as their problem. That's for them to work out. But when we're looking for mutual gains, it is in our interest to help them with their problem. Let's watch this video.
This should be good.
I have 10 minutes. After that, we were never here. We understood? Are we understood?
You heard the boy. The clock is ticking. So it's some kind of secret computer thing.
Kind of, yes.
And you think some of my old friends are going to know about it?
Yes.
And it's going to save Olivia. If I'm going to give you something, I need to get something in return. That's how this is going to work. Let me out of here.
No.
Move me to medium security.
Let me think. No.
I already spent 20 years locked up. My husband hasn't been locked up a day, and he killed the president's son. I'm negotiating in good faith here, but this idiot
is the Attorney General of the United States, while you are an enemy of the state.
David, easy. Maya, be reasonable. What do you want? You don't have.
I want a library filled with books. I want cellmates to talk to argue with. I want access to a yard fenced, but with grass. With sunlight I can feel on my face. I want contact.
No.
Well then, no deal.
What about a TV?
I'm listening.
You can do that, right?
What are TVs made of? Metal, wires, glass? We may as well give her a set of knives.
Not if she can't touch it. Flat screen. Hang it up on the wall outside of the cell. You give her a remote. She watches through the bars. That work for everybody?
Cable?
Basic.
As long as I can watch my daughter on those news channels, I'm good.
Yeah, so the root obstacles to inventing options is creative thinking. You know, the police and the Attorney General walked into that cell not having critically thought at all. Critical thinking can be done real well in brainstorming. When we brainstorm, which you ought to do anytime you're negotiating, your own team, clearly, but I would suggest that the most effective ones will occur in joint brainstorming sessions with the other side. You are trying to create mutual gain. So if you're brainstorming, you need to invent options before you decide on them. If you start deciding or criticizing options, you will cut immediately any efforts to be real creative in your thought process. Remember that. Invent options first. When you get them all out on the table, and then you can work into deciding which ones are better. You need to broaden your options so that you are thinking beyond very narrow type of considerations. Seek this mutual gain. Look and see how you can achieve their interests and your interests at the same time. And make their decision easy. This should not be difficult for either party to be able to accept. When we negotiate, we are seeking something better than not negotiating at all. So help them to make their decision. So premature judgment, single answer approach, fixed pie assumptions, and their problem is their problems are the root obstacles to being able to invent options. Principle number 4 is insist on using objective criteria. So what often happens, as particularly in positional bargaining, is the one side forces their will on the other. Do not yield to pressure. Let's watch this video and then talk.
I can't stand. I'm not going to negotiate with anyone who holds a gun to my head. We had a deal. I don't care if my approval ratings drop into single digits. I am the president of the United States, and I will lead this government shutdown until we reach an equitable agreement.
Yeah, so that's what was happening there, is one side was trying to force their way on the other. So what is the other options then? Well, we need to develop and use objective criteria. Objective meaning both sides agree to it. So we can do this by identifying fair standards. What's the market value? What's the precedence? What's been done before? Is there legal standards in this matter? How about scientific judgment? We can also identify fair procedures. Well, drawing lots, taking turns, divider, chooser, third-party decisions. These are all ways, different ways, that allow us to use objective criteria. That's principle number 4. So the method of principled negotiations are these 4 principles. Separating the people from the issue, focusing on interests, not positions, inventing options for mutual gain, and insisting on using objective criteria. People, interest, options, criteria, PIOC. That's the method of principled negotiations. Yes, but let's talk about what happens when the other side is more powerful than you are. Well, you have to have a walk-away alternative. And we call that walk-away alternative a BATNA. It's a best alternative to a negotiated agreement. Remember, you're agreeing because you believe you can achieve something together, which is better than if you just did something on your own. But if you cannot get to that agreement, that negotiated agreement, then you need to understand what you would do differently. And in fact, by having a BATNA, you become more powerful, because you know in a negotiation, when you are approaching a position in the negotiation where it is no longer profitable for you to be able to negotiate, and you should walk away. It's also very helpful to understand what the other side's BATNA would be, so that you know when you're pushing them to a point where it's no longer profitable and they'll walk away. And so if you believe it is better to get something through a negotiation, you need to work toward that. But you must have what we refer to as a BATNA. So let's talk a little bit about that. So in your early on negotiation sessions by yourself, with your team, with your side, you need to consider what your options are if there is no agreement. Then you need to convert those options into alternatives. Well, we could do this, and we could do this, and we could do this, and this creates that alternative. We convert them. And then we choose between those alternatives on which are the better ones. We can stratify them. So let's watch a video and talk about it.
All right. This is fascinating. It is. But the fact remains is that you don't have the money to bring the mortgage up to date, so you're still going to have to sell. I'm sorry, Ray. We got no choice.
Ray, people will come, Ray.
They'll come to Iowa for reasons they can't even fathom. They'll turn up your driveway, not knowing for sure why they're doing it. They'll arrive at your door as innocent as children, longing for the past. Of course, we won't mind if you look around, you'll say. It's only $20 per person. They'll pass over the money without even thinking about it. For it is money they have and peace they like.
Ray, just sign the papers.
Yeah, that video shows a number of wonderful negotiation things going on. By actually talking together in that negotiation situation about what other good options were, it could create a change in the negotiation that's going on. The other side realizes perhaps you have these other good options. BATNAs are important in negotiations. So you ask yourself, okay, yes, but what if they won't play? Well, if they don't play at all, you're not going to have a negotiation. But if they're not playing fair, well, you perhaps use a bit of negotiational jujitsu. So what do we mean by that? Well, if they're attacking you, recast that attack on you as an attack on the issue. Move it over to the issue. Don't take it personal. Ask questions and pause. People can find a pause a bit uncomfortable, and they want to fill that with something of value. And so this can become a point where you cause the other side to create a bit of unease. Don't attack their positions. Look behind it. Look toward what the interests are and drive them toward that. Let's look at this video and we'll talk.
Now, the truth is, our systems are outperforming every top seller in the market.
What about IBM?
IBM is IBM, but we're neck and neck, and we're cheaper.
Technically. The difference in cost is negligible. It just seems you guys at Cardiff think you've built yourself a fancy race car that deserves an outrageous price tag.
And we get no big blue guarantee.
I don't think there is such a thing.
Well, they have me fooled.
Me too. I worked there. I grew up there. And I was brought up to believe that the work we did, the things we built, were the singular contribution to computers that history would remember. And I believed it for a long time. For a long time, it was true. Nobody ever got fired for buying an IBM, right? What a fearful way to do business. You've made just enough safe choices to stay alive, but not enough to matter. Is that what you want? You can be more. You want to be more, don't you? The window of opportunity is closing. This is your chance. This is not about not losing. This is about you finally having the confidence to walk out on the ledge and know that you're not going to fall.
Are we still talking about systems software here?
Amen.
Let's get this guy another drink.
I'm not going to apologize for caring about your business, even if the people who work for you don't. I'll ask you one more time. Are you ready to be more?
So this video depicts a up-and-coming software company, Cardiff, which is going against the giant in the industry, IBM. Of course, this is set back sometime in our technological timeline, right? But trying to get when they have a weaker position because they're lesser known, to get another company to negotiate and to agree with them. And so you can see how a number of these points were used in this negotiation style, and it really caused the potential buyer to really think more deeply about what was as it was at stake. Yes, but they use dirty tricks. Well, don't be a victim. We need to think about what these dirty tricks look like. We need to make them explicit if they occur. How do they come in? Well, they come in as the other side may use psychological tactics, or they may use positional tactics. They may try to come at it as a good guy, bad guy situation, like they do in the police dramas you watch. Or try to say, well, take it or leave it. This is it. We're walking away. We watched a video earlier where that position was used, and the lawyer said, I thought we're negotiating here. He made it very explicit. Use personal attacks to attack you personally. We saw that in the video, right? Where they were buying the item and talking about you're from India and all these things, but the sales representative refused to allow it to become personal, right? They escalate demands. Well, we will, you can find this often where they start at a price and they say, well, you didn't like that, and they raise the price on you. And these are escalations of demands. They create a stressful environment in there for you. Of course, the personal attacks will do that, but they could do other types of things as well. They could create a situation where they leave you waiting, where they put you in an inferior seats, or they've got the sun coming through the window onto your side. There's these calculated delays where they're delaying the negotiations until it gets to a point where decision time has elapsed and a decision must be made. Each of these we would refer to as dirty tricks. They need to be avoided, and we need to be very explicit about it. We'll watch this video and we'll talk about it.
This is our third CR, our third time coming up short. We got to do better. People aren't paying us to duck the hard choices. You want to run through the details, Angela?
An act of Congress. A continuing resolution to extend no later than January 3rd, midnight, to include a reduction by 1%.
Excuse me, Mr. President, I'm sorry. There's been a change. I know we talked about a 1% cut. It's going to have to be 3.
Mr. Speaker, nothing like this was even mentioned, much less...
I'm sorry we couldn't give more notice, but we just came from our conference, and I had significant opposition to only 1%.
Only 1%?
Yes, sir.
We had a deal at 1%.
But now my members have to go back to their districts for the holidays, explain why we kept the gravy train running with a rising deficit and an economy crying out for tax relief. It's an economic situation that calls for action, not status quo spending. The 3% may sound painful, but it's only for 2 months. It'll show we're serious.
What's next?
Sure.
In 2 months, 5%? 50? How many rounds do we go, Jeff? I'm just asking.
There is no next, sir. I mean, not to get too technical, but this government runs out of money at midnight, and my guys have gone home. This is it.
No.
There is no altering this offer, Mr. President.
And I said no.
Let's be clear, sir. We cannot, we will not vote to keep on footing the bill. You will be held responsible for shutting down the federal government.
Then shut it down.
So these are the dirty tricks. They called them on it in this video. And you can find these when you're negotiating. You need to make it very explicit. Look, I want to know what the rules are. Are we both trying to reach a wise agreement and quickly and most efficiently be able to achieve a satisfactory outcome for both of us? Or are we playing hardball where one side is trying to outdo the other through a game of wits? Make it very explicit, but do not be a victim. This is what we've talked about over this video. We talked about what the problem is. It's positional bargaining. And what to do other than that, right? It's to apply these 4 methods of principled negotiations. Separate the people from the issues, focus on the interests, not positions, invent options for mutual gain, insist on using objective criteria. That acronym is pronounced PIOC. And then we talked about, what about when they're more powerful and having a BATNA? What about when they won't play fair and we use negotiations jujitsu, or they use dirty tricks and how to avoid becoming a victim? Thank you for joining, and we'll look forward to you for the next video.